Everyone, we are back in open session. The item that we're currently on is joint session with the Housing Commission / Authority, Enterprise Authority, and Planning and Development. So we routinely have these collaborative meetings just to get both bodies on the same page, and those bodies would include the Housing Commission, Authority, and the Sault Ste Board of Directors. We have an agenda in front of us. We had to have a closed session to just talk about the proprietary and staffing issues within these items, but we're back in session now. Maria, I'm going to turn things over to you if you want to get us started.
Sure. My name's Maria Mongine. I'm the Housing Director for the Sioux Tribe Housing Authority. So just to start, I'll just mention that EDC Planning Department and Housing have been working in collaboration. We've been looking at land availability across the 7 counties, wetlands, how are we going to deal with these wetlands? We're also looking to use Gitchie and do some more of manufactured housing across the service area. It speeds construction. It's a little bit more cost effective, but yet we want to balance. We want to make sure that we're still constructing homes and keeping our employees employed still. So we're looking to create a balance there. And then the Housing Authority will look to do rental vouchers for any future low-income housing tax credit applications that the EDC plans. And that will allow low-income tribal members to have housing opportunities with some rental assistance attached to some of their units. As well as we'll look at the demodding and KISOR and the different EDC rentals out there for that. So that's pretty much it with EDC and planning and housing. Did you guys want to add anything?
No, I think Maria accurately described our initiatives. I believe we're making headway, and it should really, with the bifurcated approach of stick-built and manufactured for housing, we should see some impact immediately here in production times. And I think we're developing some good processes and identifying land opportunities that we own that are close to infrastructure, which will also bring construction costs down significantly.
So some of the future grants that we'll be working on, the Housing Authority submitted an Indian Housing Block Grant Competitive, IHBGC for short, and this is to start construction on the Savard property in 2027, and that's located in St. Ignace. We hope to at least be able to construct 25 units down there. It'll be a combination of family and elderly units. And then we are looking to develop or finish the infrastructure at Odinung. So what I call phase 3 of Odinung is the infrastructure was never finished. So there's no water, sewer, electric, those kind of things there. And we're running out of room. So ideally, we'd like to send a road down a piece of parcel out there that could accommodate that. That would give us some more lots up there. So we're looking to do some infrastructure work and finish that up. And that particular grant, you can apply for infrastructure rehabilitation or construction. So there's an opportunity there. We'll also look to do the USDA grants for infrastructure or any other thing we can find. We're really good at trying to find and apply for grants. Some of our upcoming housing plans here for 2026, we're going to break ground on a 20-unit apartment building at Odinung. So they're actually doing their pre-bid meeting this week. So there's, we have quite the procurement process when we do construction. And so there's like 20 different bid packages going out there, everything from the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, you name it. Yeah. So they're gonna do a big pre-bid meeting where all the contractors come together and they get told the same information. That's happening this week for that development. And we're working on a 4-unit elderly quad. We're calling it a quad, but looking like we might go with the duplex. This one will be one of the manufactured units. We're working with Gitchie to do that. So we hope to have that done this summer as well up at Odinung. And then we're doing land development plans. So Manistee, we're starting with the environmental review process. That can be quite lengthy, and sometimes you can run into issues like wetlands and things like that. So we're hoping not, but we'll see what comes of that. And then at Escanaba, the one piece we thought had some wetlands, we, again, working through those issues up there, and maybe we'll eventually be able to make it buildable. So that's in the works, trying to figure out what we're gonna do there. And then Wetmore, we have initial site drawings, and I think we're ready to look at getting some of that work done. So we think that we can get the plans, we can get the roads up to gravel at least. So that will be a big help. And then we also are working with transportation to develop some of this land and the roads and things that are needed in those developments.
Just a quick question, Maria. So we're expected to break ground on the 20-unit apartment complex at Odening this summer.
Yes.
When do we expect that to be finished with renters in those units?
It could be as early as the end of the year, but we're thinking more like spring, early spring.
Okay, excluding that apartment complex, how many units of additional housing do we expect to go online this year?
24 units.
Okay, very good, wonderful. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the upcoming housing plans that you guys talked about, I know that when we had our joint session a few months ago back, I had brought up Hillcrest, and I know Dan has been working there. That next fair market rental is already up. I see him probably gonna need landscaping and things like that in it now. Have you guys had a discussion about Hillcrest? Because the infrastructure's there, and we talk about, that being a very good cost-effective measure. And have you guys talked about that? Because there's 20 possible sites there for homes. I've talked about it a few different times, and what's your guys' thought on that?
We didn't really discuss Hillcrest, but we can definitely put it on our radar, and I'll actually have Katie put it in the notes so that we can follow up on Hillcrest. And definitely come back with something on that as well.
Yeah, because we get double our bang for our buck there, because it's fair market now, goes in the EDC coffers. It alleviates housing there for families. So, yeah, I didn't know. I thought that we had it on the list from the last time as well. I think Dan wants the mic.
Yeah, I don't recall that, but it's quick to stand up a house out there. You're talking a few-month process when you go manufactured. So that is, the road, there's 14 available lots up one side and then 14 on the other. So we still have we could do the final testing on the secondary side. So there could be something worked out. Yeah, let us collaborate on that, because that is a quick build-out there. As far as from order start to finish, it's a couple months, and you have a unit up when you're going manufactured.
And so the 14 right now are ready and available with the infrastructure.
Correct.
And then the testing would have to be on the other 14. So, yeah, that's something that, our unit would probably appreciate, and so would the EDC coffers, because that's a revenue source. So, yeah, so I just wanted to, mention that again.
Yeah,
Thanks, Dan.
thank you.
Hey, Tyler.
Maria, well, first of all, congratulations on your position again. Nice to see you here.
you.
I just wanted to ask a question about the Wetmore. So you guys are going to be able to gravel up the actual site plan roadways by the end of the year? And then with that, go ahead and answer that one first.
Yeah, we're gonna see what we're collaborating with
Yeah.
transportation, whatever they can't pay for, like it might need a new well.
Okay. So
Mike?
we're working with transportation and see what they can pay for. But we are thinking we can get the roads at least up to gravel. There may be, I think there needs to be a new well in order to have that site developed. So we're looking to maybe we fund the well and some of the work, and then transportation does some of it as well. So we're just trying to work that out with transportation right now.
Okay, great news. That's wonderful. That's like way further than I thought we'd be right now. The other thing that I would just like to take note with, as heavy a winter as it was, I did take a drive up there after the weekend disaster, and I think your team and everybody you contracted with did a great job, but I think there needs to be a better plan for snow removal in the future up there too. because there's not a whole lot of room left to move around up there. And then the other thing that I wanted to note on that Wetmore property for the reservation is that fence needs to be removed or pushed back to our actual property boundary. Part of the reason people didn't know we had all that additional land is because we fenced it off from ourselves, which doesn't make sense. Like, why would we fence our own land off from ourselves, especially when it has berries and deer running across it? So I just want to put those notes in, and I have a bunch of community volunteers that would be more than happy to come and help tear it down this spring if spring ever comes. So I do want to see that gone too. I think everybody up there wants to see those fences gone.
Okay.
Thank you so much, though.
Yep. Just a comment on that. The reason the fences were put in is because they were using it, a lot of four-wheel traffic. And then they would go through the housing sites, and it was just, so that was what they did at the time to take care of it. But I think they're going to go away anyways due to the new land development. So
Yeah,
we'll get
well,
that taken care of.
and I understand that, but I mean, at the very least, it should have been like the boundary of our property, right? Not fencing our property off from our property. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we can keep going, Maria.
Okay. And then we are preparing, this is our last week, to get a low-income housing tax credit application submitted for April 1st. It's pretty complex application process, so there's a lot to it. So we're gathering all the information and any of the documents needed so that we're ready to submit on April 1st. We are working with a consultant to do this. This will allow a 36-unit permanent supportive housing project. So this project would, we consider it like the next step from the homeless shelter. So it would help people that have a long history of being homeless. They have housing barriers, disabilities, those kind of things, and provide housing for them. It's low barrier. We meet them where they are. Those kind of, there isn't really conditions on how, they would just have, the typical rental. You would just have to be like, you still have to follow a lease and all that kind of a thing. You would be required to do that, but there might be, we're not going to look at your background check and determine that you can't have a house because of that background check, things like that. And then when they get in there, then we wrap the supportive services around them. It's voluntary, but they find that when they're living with peers, and they see other peers recovering or whatever it may be, they tend to want that too as well once they see their lives are getting better. And that's, the basic need of a human is shelter. So I think it's really important, and it's a really important project for our community. Now, we may do this again, but it probably won't be for a while. But I can see it maybe possibly something that would be viable on the western end, like in Escanaba or Marquette. So that's one of the things we're working on.
Okay. And just to piggyback off that, and for the benefit of the membership that's online, this is something that we've been trying to get for a little while now. It's contingent on us being awarded those tax credits, so if we don't get them, the project won't come to fruition. The legislative department is doing everything that they can as well. They prepped me pretty thoroughly to testify in a state hearing last Monday in support of an appropriation to help cover the costs of this apartment complex. During my Capitol Hill visits last week, we also asked for a federal match. It's more likely that we're going to get that state appropriation, like we did a couple years ago for the Lodge of Hope, which was spearheaded by our state senator, John DeMoose. But we're going to keep doing everything that we can on our side as well.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay, so that brings us to other projects now, correct?
Okay, yep. So there was, lots of discussion about moving families from smaller units or from larger units to smaller units. So at one point, Director Paymont had asked that we do an article that was positive and that this is a good thing. We did do that in the Sioux Tribe newspaper. That was just published, and it was called Right Sizing. So it talks about how utilities are decreased, and you're not, you can get rid of some things and you compact a little bit, and it's usually better that way. So we did put out a positive article. Our next step will be to notice all housing sites, those that are in larger units, that they can move to smaller units, or they may have to move down the road. We've asked for volunteers first. We'll do the same with our letter. And then we'll prioritize the people that actually want to volunteer. So we'll try to make it as smooth as possible, but, in the end, we might have to force some moves in order to do this.
So this could be a situation where maybe once upon a time, a family was offered a unit for like maybe a 4-bedroom house because they had a ton of kids, but maybe they've lived in that unit for 20 years. They raised their kids are out of the house, but we still have situations where you might have a family, which could be a person, just one individual in a 4-bedroom house. So we're looking at transitioning them into smaller units to make those larger units available for families that are currently on our waiting list that need that housing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and it just has to happen.
Yes, and we did this in St. Ignace. When we built the elderly complex, so I just want to say it's nothing new. When we built the elderly complex, we had several elders living in 3-bedroom units on that housing site, and we had them all moved to the elder complex, and that made substantial movement on the waiting list down there. Because of that, we were able to house I think 9 more families down there off the waiting lists, and another additional 10 elders off the waiting list down there. So it was really big movement.
The one thing that I would ask, though, the families that aren't being offered smaller units to move into, be gracious when you give them time, because, I mean, you guys know, you guys work in housing right now. There's not a lot of affordable housing right now. So I'm not sure, what the timeline is gonna be for them to move out, but just keep that in mind, it takes longer than a month to find a rental that families can afford.
Oh, yeah. So we would transition, typically they'll be transitioned to our units. A smaller Sioux Tribe housing unit
Okay.
is how we would do it.
Okay, very good.
So, so that's the update there. And then I wrote down rent structure. We haven't really done a lot with it, but I met with the managers and we went through our strategic plan, and that was definitely one area that we will be looking at, discussing how are we going to get everybody there to one rent structure. And the way that you increase income or revenue in especially the 1937 units is adjusting the ceiling rent. So you bring the ceiling rent up. Right now, I think it's $468 for a 3-bedroom. That's just an example. So maybe it's, you bring it up another 5%, or something like that. Well, eventually you'll increase the revenue, bringing up ceiling rents. You don't have to have ceiling rents under NAHASDA. So, but when NAHASDA was enacted, that's when we could put ceiling rents in. So NAHASDA's been around 30 years now. So I don't want to see ceiling rents go away, but they definitely probably could be increased. I mean, if 30% of your income's $1,200 a month and you're only paying $468, then, you probably could pay a little bit more. So we'll kind of look at that. We'll look at everything. And then you don't want to hit them we're going to here. We want to kind of do baby steps and get them up to there. That's the nicest way I think for all of you anyway. So we'll come up with some sort of plans, and, bring that back to some ideas we have there.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then we have point system, correct?
Vacant unit turnover.
Oh, vacant unit, okay,
Yeah,
very good.
so, at the time, sometimes we do struggle with vacant units, and typically it's because of staffing, right? So we had some staffing turnover, we were short-staffed. It wasn't really flowing very well. But since then, we have stabilized in that area. We have a wonderful maintenance supervisor now who's got them on track. They're really, our vacant unit went way down, so there's quite a few that's been turned over in the last couple months. And that's because they're on a schedule, they're made a priority, those kind of things. So I think that you'll see that will be better over the next year for sure, and in the future. But again, it depends on the damage. you know, so if it has really bad drywall damage, it's probably gonna take longer than just something that needs a few minor fixes and some paint, so.
So I have a couple questions on that, if you don't mind. Are we keeping track of how long it's taking to turn over those vacant units? Are we?
Yes.
Okay. And I get it that like, we can't get them online until the damage is repaired and certain units are left more damaged than others. But have we ever considered not consulting, but contracting with maybe a small construction company? Like when we fall behind, or maybe we don't have the capacity and a whole bunch of units have been left vacant? Because I mean, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. We have been for years. COVID, the locks project, you know, a whole bunch of factors have really driven up the price of housing in our community. And we want to do everything that we can to increase the amount of units that we have available to people and speed up the length of time it takes to get those units back online. So have we ever thought of that?
Yeah, well, actually, that's some of the things we're gonna plan, like with the snow, dealing with the snow. We don't think it's gonna get any better, and in fact, it might get worse, so we're gonna start amping up plans, but that's definitely something we could also put in our plans too. I know that they were talking about getting some backup contractors in areas in case we need, you know, there's emergencies or we need to get things done. So we will look at that, and definitely it'll be a part of vacant unit turnover too.
Okay, very good. I mean, everyone up here has gotten the phone calls about snow removal, and it isn't a slight on you guys at all. You guys do a fantastic job. It's just we only have so much capacity. We only have so many plow trucks. We only have so many drivers. Those drivers have to go home and sleep eventually. But every now and then we have a freak storm where it's all hands on deck. So if we could create some sort of emergency system to where we got this company, that company on standby to plow, that would be great. But then we also remember, if we're just a backup for these companies, they're not gonna prioritize us first before the people that they plow out every single storm. But we just have to have a system in place, because a lot of times those elders can't get out of their driveway, you know, they might have medical emergencies. A lot of times, like maybe even the roads through the reservation don't get plowed. And again, I hope you guys don't take it as a criticism, because I know how hard you guys work. You know, and it takes really all the hands that we have to get unburied sometimes, but just trying to think of creative solutions. Bridget?
Yeah, we did discuss earlier this morning some of those issues. After this storm and some different things that have happened, I would like to see the tribe as a whole work together, because I think when we have housing, we have facilities, we have health, we have all these different areas, and we're having plow people for all those individual ones, where, like in my area, if I'm waiting for someone to come to Kinross, which the weather might be way different in Kinross than it is in St. Ignace, that you can actually just have somebody that's in the community that's not being paid to drive down, use the gas in the vehicle, and maybe that person in all these units is the person that clears all of our property, or maybe it's two of them that do the casino and the facilities and all of our properties, rather than have all these different silos of these plows, and maybe we figure out who's all contributing to them. But I think we can do a better job if we all just work together on that.
Yeah, it would have to be part of a larger conversation. We'd actually have to figure out what each individual silo's capacity is, because maybe they're just as buried as housing is. But certain properties should be prioritized over others. If a casino parking lot is closed, you know, those plows should be used for, you know, low-income houses, elders in particular, you know, those types of people and groups. But yeah, I mean, we definitely have to make improvements. Anything else to go over on this topic before we move on to, oh, I'm sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to follow up on that. Is that, you know, it is. I really like Bridget's point that we do have to come together as a tribe in these situations, but also there could be cost savings here, because we have, you know, the Quaden was closed down, M28 was closed between Marquette and Christmas for like 3 days, and the Quaden was closed, and we're paying contractors to go out to the housing site, maybe even for the health site. I'm not sure who pays for that. And we have these plow trucks in the Quaden parking lot that just sit there. Like, why don't we reevaluate our contracts and see, like, what is the cost to actually just pay for another employee to sit in these plow trucks all day long? If we have the equipment, if we have the capabilities, I feel like it would be more efficient. Plus, us taking care of ourselves, I think, is a lot better than relying on a contractor who has a variety of things and we're not a top priority of a contractor, unless you pay them extra. So I feel like, we do have to look at these things, especially this winter brought out a lot for us because we've been taking for granted that we've had pretty easy winters and we're going backwards again. But I think there's a few things. The other thing I'd like to address, this may not be housing. I think again, it's a tribal-wide thing, is that we now have community centers in each of our communities. I think we should take a look at those as a tribe and get generators in each of them and make it as a safe place for people to go when power goes out. This storm didn't knock out a lot of power on the western end, but the previous storm knocked out the power for 2 and upwards of 3.5 days for some people in Marquette County. And having a place for people to go and get warmed up would have been helpful. And we don't have that yet, but it's something that I'd also like the tribe to look at as the tribe as taking care of our people, especially since we do have community centers across our entire region now. It's just, we need to start looking at emergency protocols and best practices, because having plows sit in the Quaden parking lot while people are just stranded on the reservation, it makes no sense to me, but also I understand because we don't have the employees to put in those trucks to get up there and plow them out. So we need to take a bigger look at these things. But I fully agree and still appreciate the work everybody's doing. We need to come together and be more efficient when things like this happen. Yep.
So I don't know if we do have plow trucks parked. I mean, it's part of the larger conversation that we need to have. So I don't know who's plowing the individual parking lots. I don't think anyone at this table does. But Tyler makes a good point. We need to come together. We need to figure out what resources we have and prioritize those resources to the right places. Anything else on this topic? Vern, go ahead. If you want to come up, use a microphone though.
Okay, the problem with the snow, the amount of snow that we received, we have plow trucks. We had a plow truck go up there, but when you have 4 foot of snow, plow truck isn't going to do it. We had to bring in heavy equipment to get people in at Manistee, Wetmore, and in Hessel, because our plow trucks just couldn't do it. We had staff, we had trucks, but we need heavy equipment when that happens. That's why we're looking at doing an annual contract possibly with someone in these areas where when this type of situation occurs, we have them on standby.
Okay, I appreciate it, Vern. All right, let's move on to point system then.
So, I don't really have, we haven't really done anything with our point system, but I did want to share it with you. We can send this out as a PDF, but we also did an article in the tribal paper to talk about, our housing is never going to be first come, first serve. It's always going to be preferenced with points, and some of the areas that you could receive points in. So if you're just, because maybe you're just in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, and you just want to try to get a house on the reservation, well, you would get the basic points, like maybe you have a child, Sioux tribe, you're employed, those kind of things. But really what puts people towards the top of the list are those housing situation points. So homelessness, involuntarily displaced, fleeing a domestic violence situation, rent burden, paying more than 50% of your income to rent and utilities, those types of things. So I know it's really frustrating and people don't understand. That's why we don't like to give the placement on the waiting list, because that changes daily, depending on whoever presents has a housing application and what their housing situation is. And even though you've had your housing application in for the last 2 years and kept it updated, people are gonna jump you. That's just how it works. So I really don't have any, we always, review this, and as there's housing trends and things like that, even in low-income housing, if anything like that changes, we always review these points, or other areas and update them as needed. But there really can't be a lot of movement. I know one of the things was to do an audit on our application, possibly, in our wait list. And so if you don't work in, if you haven't calculated rents or worked in occupancy in low-income housing, you're not going to know what you're looking at when you're going through these applications. So maybe our housing commissioner, Heather, would do it. She was an occupancy specialist years ago. But anyways, I don't know how we could set that up. But, so, we do have ladies that process our applications. They're called occupancy specialists. That's their job title. And they work with the applicants to get them the most points they can. So they get the documentation, and every time they're awarded points, it has to be a document in that file. Why are they getting these points? So if they just call, hey, I'm in a DV situation. Well, are you working with an agency? What's going on? You know, what can you get us? And so they work through those things with them. So we don't really make exceptions. They have to have, all the points have to be documented. So I just wanted to make a comment, and I'm not really sure what the answer is and what anybody is looking for, but here are some of the, here's the, you know, obviously that's part of, like, if anybody would like our policy, they can always call up and get our policies. We'll send them to them. But this is actually the point system. We watch it because sometimes we keep definitions to those points too, and what's those kind of things, because sometimes it could be manipulated if you really looked at it. You know, I'll get this, I'll get this, I'll get this. So we try very hard not, so no one can do that.
Well, just a couple questions on that then. Do you feel like there's any criteria that should be added to the points? Like maybe if you have a certain situation, or do you feel like we capture everything?
I feel like we capture everything right now that I could think of. I don't really know if you know, the occupancy girls will make recommendations, but it's typically not to the points. And if it is, it will be like, this isn't really clear, it reads this way, and that's how they're looking at it. And I was like, okay, well, how can we fix it? Those kind of things, that they have not brought anything forth to update the point system.
Do you feel like every category receives the correct amount of points, or it should be reassessed?
That definitely could be reassessed. They could be increased or decreased, but I think they're okay right now. Sometimes you can get people that have just their typical situations. They're a tribal member, they're employed. They just want to, you know, get a house on the reservation. Once in a while, that will happen, but it's not very often. It's typically those ones at the top are homeless situations or involuntarily displaced or things like that. And we saw a lot of that involuntarily displaced because the rental units were being sold because people were, you know, there was a big housing market here. So that really increased. So I don't really have any recommendations to change it at this point, but we are always trying to update it and keep it as, you know, fair as possible for all applicants.
Okay, and that was going to be my last question, whether or not you had any recommendations. You don't, okay. Any other questions, comments from the other board members? Okay, anything else to go over, Maria?
No, that's all I have.
All righty, well, we appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. Thank you for all the snow removal, everything that you do for all the elders and everything else. And we'll get you guys here next time. How often are we doing this? I can't remember.
It was like every 3 months or so, but
That's
it
what I
was
thought
like
it was,
4
quarterly.
months or
Yep.
now, whatever,
Okay.
3-4 months, something like that.
It's been about 6 months. Last time was
Biannually?
October.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Well,
we'll
if you guys
try.
need anything, just get a hold of us. And again, we appreciate all the work that you guys do. So,
Okay.
miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes all the items in today's workshop. So this workshop is officially over, and we'll be meeting tomorrow, I believe, at 10 o'clock, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right. See everyone then.
Oh.
The recording has